First off, I want to thank the brave men and women who work behind the wall. I want to thank them on a national level because their job goes unrecognized.
How do they try to turn a guard?
Well, correctional officer. Sorry, I apologize. But correctional officer. How are you guys doing today? It's Anthony Gangi. Welcome to another episode of Tier Talk. Great episode coming your way. We're going to be discussing what you should expect your first day entering into corrections. Your first day as a correctional officer, your first day as a non-uniform staff member, what you should expect. And I have my guest with me, Russ Hamilton, the founder of Keepers of Chaos. That's on Facebook, Chaos, K-A-O-S. What's up, Russ?
Hey, Anthony. Just glad to hear what the particular topic is going to be about. See how well I can think on my feet and come up with something to deliver to the audience. Things are going great on Keepers of Chaos. We're growing by leaps and bounds. So anyone that's a corrections professional can join. So come on over. It's on Facebook. And, we carry a lot of content. We carry everything video-wise through Tier Talk. And so it's a great place to get a lot of different input from a lot of different feeds in order to further your career, stay informed, and stay safe, most importantly.
As you can tell, Russ didn't know the topic. It's called Surprise Topic Sunday. All right, guys. So, guys, I think it's a great topic, what to expect your first day. Now, guys, if you haven't, the show Tier Talks to you, brave men and women that work in corrections. So please subscribe, interact, engage, comment, hit that bell. Bell's going to notify you every time I post a video. We're going to go to our sponsor. And we come back, what to expect on your first day entering that prisoner jail. Stand by.
I wanted to attend a university that had an intelligence program. I wanted to look at problems different. I wanted to increase my critical thinking abilities. AMU offered those avenues to expand. Obtaining your degree as an adult, you're actually paying yourself and investing in yourself. You can't put a dollar on it, it's priceless. It's something that can never be taken away from you.
American Military University. Learn from the leader.
All right, and we are back. First off, I just want to say the first thing that got to me a little bit when I was entering into the prison system, when I was starting my first day on the job, and guys, this is not something that they could tell you what's going to happen, but it's still not something you could really prepare for until you kind of walk in that first day, is the stairs. Oh, man, how they are sizing you up, how they're checking you out, figuring out what's the best way to approach you. Russ, my first day, I had to walk through a yard to get to the unit. So the yard was an active yard. They didn't shut down the yard. You would just walk through it. And the moment you walked through, everybody was looking at you. And it's just, again, if you're not ready for that, it could feel a little funny. And then again, what are they doing? They're sizing you up, looking at you, see what you're about. And then ultimately one of them, is preparing for that approach. How can I approach that individual? But let me ask you a question. Did you go for did you have to go through the stare downs?
Oh, absolutely. I kind of got a little bit of a heads up in that I was able to take a pre-tour where I was just like the only one being led around. And so there was nothing that kind of singled me out. So inmates really didn't have any idea who I was. I was just kind of meandering about with a couple of guys that were giving me the tour there at San Quentin. And so that part, no stairs, really nothing being said. It changed though, after I went through the academy, it was about a month and a half later. And we got there. And so, of course, I was with all of the new guys and we were all, in our little clusters and stuff. And so that's when the stairs, a few cat calls, that kind of thing started jumping off. And we were immediately being hustled because we had an emergency situation over in East Block to go to. And we spent the whole day working there. And so, yeah, it was very intimidating, especially the second time around with all that attention being focused on us.
Yeah, the stairs were something that I still remember. I remember. I mean, what's funny, to be honest with you? Every time I've moved from one facility to the next, so again, I was an officer at a female facility when I became a sergeant at a maximum security facility, and then obviously on the administrative level at the facility I'm at next. Each first day I entered that facility, the stairs do happen. again, the only difference is I may know some of the inmates at this point, you know, especially when I went from one male facility to another. But, you know, again, it's the challenge, you know, like I know that the stairs are part of that, you know, let's see what this person's about. Let's see if I can figure out an avenue to how to approach that individual. But the key thing here, guys, excuse me, that I learned on the first day also is be yourself. Don't pretend to be somebody else, because trust and believe, when you have those people that look to try to be tougher than they really are, those inmates are sizing you up. And the moment they approach you, you may think you're tough, but they're looking at your body language and they're seeing that, yeah, how you're speaking to us really doesn't connect to how your body language is. So really try to be yourself the first day, because those stairs, they're really just sizing you up. Everything from movement to how you interact to that dynamic you have with the other officers on the scene to the dynamic you're having with any inmate that comes up to approach you. So again, that stare is really just an effort to size you up. Now, I know another thing, obviously, and we kind of touched on a little bit, is to be challenged. So you better be ready to say no, right, Russ? Would you agree that on your first day, expect to say no a lot?
Yeah, you know, there's this sense of being, you know, probed, this sense of being measured, this sense of being sized up. And all of those things, you know, contribute to that particular, I don't know what you want to call it, just that attempt to try and figure out what your buttons are, where your buttons are, and how they can find a way to get over on you in some method or some way to intimidate you in some way that they take you off of your game, that they take you out of being an effective officer. And that's going to happen at the beginning. You know, you are not by any means that finished product. You know, you're a long ways from it, as a matter of fact, at that point. So what you have to do is you just have to be the one that's, you know, providing that input, rising to the challenge, you know, overcoming the obstacles, making sure that you're getting every chance to train, every chance to learn something. I was always that guy. I always had my hand raised. You know, I was always, hey, we need someone to go down and, you know, cuff up some inmates that are down on the yard, whatever it is, you know. Be the one to step forward and learn something new all the time. As you rise to those challenges, as you know, come to meet them and you're not hanging back, inmates are going to see that and they're going to respond to it. And they're going to respond to it by being less inclined to challenge someone that's that way versus someone who's always hanging back. Because they're going to watch what you're doing even when they're not interacting with you. And if you're always that one hanging back, if you're always, you know, second, third, fourth in line to go do something or to step forward to take charge, they're going to mark you as someone who's hesitant and that can be manipulated.
Yeah. Also, if you're one of those staff members that always wait for a partner to do a tour, like if you're one of those correctional officers that won't do a tour unless there's someone around you. We used to get that a lot too, where it's like inmates like, you ever notice that this officer only tours either when they're with a supervisor or, you know, when there's another officer on the unit? Like they never go out and, you know, do the tours on their own. They usually see that as a sign of weakness sometimes. You also have a lot of questions that are going to come your way day one from the inmate population to try to get a feel of who you are. Now, guys, you got to be careful how you answer those questions. Technically, most of the time, the answers are going to be none of your business. I mean, that's pretty much the questions that they're asking are probably going to be personal, and they're testing you to see if you're willing to either give them the answers or totally push them off. I will guarantee you this: if you want those questions to stop coming, the first time an inmate asks you something personal, get right in their face and say, what you just asked me has nothing to do with my job or my prescribed role. So technically, it's none of your business. But I will say, if you answer the first inmate and they ask you something personal, expect another inmate and another inmate and another inmate. And all they're doing at that point, guys, the moment you answer something personal, is they're poking on that vulnerability. Would you agree with that, Russ?
Yeah, you know, there's a very deep game to this. And, you know, one little piece of information here and one little piece of information there may not seem like much, but it's a puzzle. And sooner or later, they can take these disparate little pieces and start to get an idea of who you are, maybe what your business is out on the street, get an idea of, your profile, your personality, and then they start to exploit that stuff. And so, you always want to keep them, guessing. You always want to give them that incomplete picture where they're not really quite sure exactly, who you are. Now that kind of goes against a little bit when we start talking about, consistency with the way we treat them. But the real consistency is an underlying fact is that you don't engage in any of that, those personal little tidbits of information, no matter how innocuous it seems. The team you like out there, where you're from, what kind of car you drive, any of that stuff. You want to keep everything on the professional level only. Don't engage with them in anything else, because that is part of their game, not yours.
Right. And the moment you answer that personal question, guys, you got to realize something. Answering that question is a submissive gesture on your end. I mean, the immediate response should be, however light you got to put it, is it's none of your damn business. And the question you ask has nothing to do with my prescribed role here as a professional. Also, when you first enter this job, inmates are going to know, because they're going to know, because one thing is they never seen you before. So sometimes they'll try to ask you if you worked at a jail or something a little different. Basically, if you work at a prison, they'll ask you if you worked, at a jail. If you worked at a jail, then they ask you if you worked at a prison or another jail. Basically, they're trying to see if you have experience with the inmate population. Sad thing is most people will lie, as opposed to telling the inmates none of their business. They'll lie and say, well, yeah, I worked at this county, or I worked at this state, or I done this and I done that. And they're lying right off the bat. The inmate knows they're lying because, again, these are professional inmates, so they know if you've ever interacted with an inmate before. Trust and believe there's a way to carry yourself around inmates that comes through experience. You're not going to get it on your first day, but you're going to get it as you start to move forward in your profession. But a lot of inmates will try to figure you out on the first day. When they ask you a question, they kind of already know the answer. They're just trying to see what you have to say. So now here you are worried about your image, and you start to tell a story of maybe working at a county jail that you never worked at, or a state facility that you never worked at. And maybe they've been there, or don't think that they don't have the resources to find out. So let's say, you say, well, yeah, I worked at this county jail. Next thing you know, they're calling their people to see what you're about, because that's what they do. They're just always information gathering. So again, the quick thing is, and what should be done is whatever they ask you, it's none of your business. So you want to know if I worked at a jail beforehand? None of your business. You want to know if I worked at a prison beforehand? None of your business. The least amount of information you give them about anything that's outside of your prescribed role, the least they're able to do to look it up, to research it, because you're not giving them anything that they can take with them. But I do know a lot of people that's more about pride, that when an inmate comes up and asks them a question that they're trying to figure out how new this person is, this person the officer may go back and make up a lie to try to say, well, I'm familiar with this. This is where I've been before. And then the inmates are going to be able to figure that out immediately. I mean, would you agree with that, Russ?
Yeah. People tend to want to, barter back and forth, with little bits of information to make, so-called small talk, or whichever way you put it. And then we get officers that I always tell them not to do this. So, well, I'm building rapport. You know what? You're not clicked in enough to understand what rapport building is yet. And then sometimes, even if you have years in, if you're telling me you're building rapport, I really question what it is that you're doing, because rapport doesn't usually get us anything with inmates. It might be something temporary, but the fact is that inmates are inmates. Inmates are involved in that, that criminal mindset. So the idea of rapport building is kind of a logical fallacy, if you will. So just, be upfront with them and be professional and build significant, boundaries. Don't go beyond them, and just, talk to them, but don't, volunteer anything that's not absolutely necessary.
Right. And another thing, guys, is when you're new and inmates know you're new, they're going to know there's a lot of things that you don't know, and they're going to volunteer to help you. They're just going to come out and offer you help, give you advice. You have to make it known from the get-go that you don't lean on them for that advice, or that they're not the final say, that you will go to someone else, like your peers, the fellow officers, your fellow staff members, to get you the answers you need. Because again, on day one, guys, you're going to be faced with a lot of situations like count. Where can the inmates possibly be? Movements, just the overall operations of the facility. And it could get overwhelming, on your first few days. So inmates may decide to try to come up and help you through it. And the reason why you want to make it known that, if I need help, these are the areas I can go to, is because you don't want to have that level of obligation, number one, to that inmate. Also, you don't want to be misguided. Why am I going to go to an inmate when I have my FTO, or I have my partner that I can talk to? So again, if you want an inmate that's going to give you the right advice, what that inmate should do is say, hey, I know you're having a little trouble. Maybe you should call somebody like an officer or a supervisor to come down and check on you, and hopefully they don't send you to a corrupt one. But hypothetically, just in short, what I'm trying to say is the only advice that you should be getting day one are from your peers or your supervisors. Should not be getting it from the inmates, but they will make that attempt on day one to help you. And you got to be very careful of that. Again, that's something else that happens, right, Russ?
Yeah, my first day, I wasn't necessarily, well, I should say not my first day, but my first actual real shift. I went in there. The guy that I relieved didn't give me any help. As a matter of fact, he didn't say a word to me, even though I showed up extra early. And I was just kind of looking around, what do I do? Started reading my post orders and looking at those. And then, this inmate, he starts talking to me. He's inside of his cell. And, I'm on the 5th tier of East Block, Bayside, death row, my very first shift. And he starts telling me, hey, what you're supposed to do is you're supposed to bring me the telephone. We had these little telephones that we rolled down the tiers. And he goes, and I'll be on the telephone for a little bit. And the guy next to me, you're going to handcuff him and take him down to the shower and put him in the shower, and come back and get the next guy and put him in the shower next to that one. And he's telling me all this stuff like it's his job. And I'm like, holy crap, and so I went and called the sergeant and said, hey, I just want to make sure this guy's telling me all this stuff. And the sergeant, believe it or not, because he just doesn't have time to deal with me, I guess, says, yeah, just do what he says. And I was like, holy crap, you can't be serious about this. This is death row. So I just, kind of called the gunner who was across from me, and I just double checked with everything. And he says, yeah, the sergeant is kind of messing with you a little bit, but I've got you. And I made it through my first shift, and I was cuffing up all kinds of inmates and taking them to showers and pulling them out, all there on death row with, no help except for an inmate that wanted to be overly helpful. So that's not a good idea. That's not a good position to be left in. And then what does happen is you do start feeling, obligated to this inmate because he's being super helpful. But we don't know how far that goes. And we know out in the real world, it didn't go very far to his victim, who he, chopped up and killed or whatever. So, take all that with a grain of salt and be very, very careful, because the principles that you operate on in the outside world are not the same principles that are operated on by everybody else on that inside world. So, take everything with caution, a grain of salt, if you will.
Yeah, and also on your first day, remember we talked about being challenged. Expect a lot of minor rule infractions the first day. The inmates are testing the water with you. I would automatically say, and I mentioned it earlier, to say no. You got to be the RoboCop at the very beginning of your career, because you're setting the tolerance level. If you are too easy, they're going to walk all over you. So for a little bit, that beginning of your career, it's pretty much no. You haven't developed discretion yet, right? So expect a lot of inmates to do a lot of minor rule infractions, and I expect you to be on top of them. If you got to charge them, charge them. And if you're a supervisor, you should be expecting those charges coming your way on that first day or the first few days of those rookies, because the inmates are testing them to see where they can go. So what I mean by minor rule infractions is maybe unauthorized areas, go down someone else's wing. If you have inmates that should be locked down for a few hours because they're on punishment, expect them to try to get out and go to yard. I don't really depend on how the facility operates. If you have a facility that doesn't allow, we're talking about usual house rules here, like maybe no eating in the public area. Expect for inmates to be eating in the public area. Let's put it this way. When you first come in, you're like a substitute teacher. So you know how when you were at school, the substitute teacher, the students thought they can get away with everything? Well, until you get that substitute teacher that turns out to get on you. Well, that's the same thing here. Expect the inmates to try to maneuver, do some little minor rule infractions to see where you're at. And you do have to be that RoboCop at the very beginning. And again, you can lessen that, but you got to set a level you got to be strict, because if you come in too soft, they're going to walk all over you. But Russ, I'm sure the first day you expect a lot of minor rule infractions from the inmates, right?
Yeah, and that's one of those things, you just have to continue to come in. You have to continue to adjust what you're doing. You have to, start looking to get, some tips and some direction from your supervisor and from your peers. But through that, you also have to try and be kind of eclectic in accepting what those tips are. There are a lot of officers and even supervisors who just really, they kind of let a lot of things slide, and they're not as on top of their game as they should be. And so if you start emulating the wrong ones, you're going to let your level of, your level of awareness, your situational awareness slip. And you don't want to do that, because what happens is a lot of people, they just relax too much. They let too many things slide. They get involved in the idea that they can have a rapport with the inmates, and that, it's okay to have all this, give and take, and develop, a low level personal relationship, because it just makes the whole shift go smoother. And that's not true. It works for a minute, but then something bad happens and all that rapport is out the window. And then you've got a staff member hurt, or they've managed, because you're letting things slide, to get a bunch of contraband into the compound. Maybe they're not expecting you to search. And, next thing you know, somebody else comes in on your shift because you've taken the day off, and they're finding, a buttload of weapons or something. And, this whole time you've been letting things slide. So that's a definite no-go. So you really have to watch what you're being manipulated into, what you're being groomed for by the inmates. And when you're emulating people that are supposed to be in the know, you have to make sure that you're emulating the right ones. Watch them with a cautious eye too, because a lot of times they've just let things slide and they've become complacent.
Yeah, and guys, when you're new and you aren't enforcing those rules, because you should be enforcing them at that point, again, later on you could develop discretion, but for the most part, when you get those minor rule infractions, as a rookie, you are going to set that standard. Supervisors, you need to support that. You're going to expect that these inmates are going to be going to you when they have those rookies, and you got to show support to those rookies. So again, if you're a rookie, expect the inmates, because they're going to see you challenging what they're trying to do. Again, those minor rule infractions, like Russ said, the things that they're used to doing. Well, not today. Today I'm new, and I'm strictly policy and procedure right now until I could develop discretion. So at that point, we're on reset right now. And if they want to try to go back and, maybe live life with a more senior officer, I'm not saying it's the right thing to do, but having said that, that's not going to be when you're there. So when the supervisor comes in, they should expect that and support your ability to run the unit how you feel you have to run it. I mean, you agree with that, Russ, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And like I say, you just have to watch the information that you're taking in, both from your peers and from your supervisor, because sometimes, you're getting signals that, aren't necessarily the best way of doing things. And that might even be, a little bit lax or a little bit complacent, because they're working from a position of just trying to let things smooth out, and smooth isn't always good. Smooth is the path to something that's much worse and less smooth along the way.
Right. And guys, also I noticed with a lot of new boots, that's when a lot of the contraband starts to spread. So again, having control of that unit matters. Another thing is inmates. We talked about inmates asking you questions. We talked about them asking you personal questions. They'll also ask you questions of things that they may want to do. Now, mind you, I'm going to tell you this. When inmates ask you a question if they can do something, it's because they can't. Because 9 times out of 10, if they could, they wouldn't ask you. Trust and believe, what they could do, they're going to do. But what they feel they can't do, they're going to ask you. And they're going to ask you for permission. And I'll guarantee you, if you're foolish enough to give them permission, the moment they get caught, they're going to say that you gave them permission. So what I would do is anytime an inmate asks me for permission to do something, and if I don't know if they can or they can't, I'm going to tell them no, and then I'll figure it out later with, whoever I got to talk to see if that was the right answer or not. And if it's the right answer, great. I did what was needed. If it's the wrong answer, it's not a bad thing. I'll just go back and say, you know what, I've been thinking about it, and you can go ahead and do what you got to do. But Russ, 9 times out of 10, if they're asking you for permission to do something, it's because they can't do it, correct?
Well, not only that, but it doesn't really, because you're new, it doesn't matter what your answer is. You can tell them no, and then they end up going and doing it. And if you're not paying attention, and then someone comes by and asks them, hey, what the heck are you doing? They're going to say, well, I asked officer such and such. They're not going to say that you said no. They're just going to say that they asked you, and they're going to imply what's going on there. And then that puts you in a position where, like, if it's your supervisor that's hitting them up, did you tell such and such that he could? And then you have to say, no, I told him no. And your supervisor is going to be looking at you like, what the heck, And we all know what the game is, but it still puts a little bit of doubt in that supervisor's head as to just, whether or not you're a true marshmallow or not.
Now, by the way, guys, we could cover this all day, things to expect on your first day. This is just a few things we thought we could do on a random Sunday morning. But Russ, do you have anything else you would like to add in closing?
Just want to say it's been great to do this topic. I just want to plug Keepers of Chaos. We're getting ready to, well, I hope, do the Tough Mudder down in Tejon Ranch, California. That's what I spend all day today doing training. So if anyone's interested in doing that, hit me up on Keepers of Chaos. Right now, I've only got one person interested, so we'll see how that goes. It's 10 miles. It's 20 obstacles. And I don't know if we're going to be able to do something in addition to that, but I definitely want to have a team started. If you're interested, you got to start training now. I've been training for, well, probably over a year now, on and off. But now I'm really having to step it up because it's no joke. I've done 2 of them before. And so everyone is very, very hard.
Right. And the key is, guys, to just get this out there, to be together, share some stories, and finally take what we do off of social media for a little while and really interact in person. That would be great to finally see our communities, Keepers of Chaos, Tier Talk, just hanging out together and just shooting the breeze and maybe having some steak. Maybe having a nice steak dinner. I don't know if that's a good idea after a Tough Mudder, but and also if you guys can't do it, you guys can always show support. Les is very big on just going out there and just rooting for them to finish that run. Now, guys, again, if you haven't, the show Tier Talks for you, brave men and women that work in corrections. So please subscribe, interact, engage, comment, hit that bell. Bell's going to notify you every time I post a video. Stay safe.